Alrighty, in this video we're going to be talking about vinylfs. So vinylfs is very core to Gulp. In fact, it's part of the same project. And if we come down here and look at some of the sample code, it should look pretty familiar. It looks pretty much like Gulp, a Gulp task. And that's because that's how Gulp works with its streams. So vinylfs is mostly about sending files through an object stream so that they can be worked on. See, for example, what's interesting, we see this example right here. In fact, it might even be better if I showed you guys the actual Gulp file that we have over here. And we see we're doing, like, for example, this guy, the scripts. So right now we have two scripts. And we load in the scripts with the gulp.source. This creates a stream of vinyl files. And the reason that's important is because it carries around additional metadata of those files that were acquired. See, it's not just a stream of straight up text, because then when we run it through Babel and then we pipe it to gulp.dest, how would it know that there were two files there to begin with? How would it even know the file names? So gulp.source doesn't just create a stream of text. It creates a stream of objects that represent the files so that the individual plugins can work on those individual files, and then when we pipe it out to the end, they get printed as separate files, as opposed to being concatenated into one. Now, there are plugins in Gulp that will take their transform streams, that will take all those individual vinyl files and merge them into a single file, concatenating them. And we'll see an example of that when we talk about production builds. But for the most part, when you're in a Gulp stream, each file, you can think of it just an individual object kind of floating around in the stream. So anyway, let's just take a quick look at vinylfs, and also a quick look at basically how we can write our own Gulp plugins. I mean, it's so simple, and hopefully seeing this code will help you guys out. Now, vinylfs is not a built-in thing, so we definitely do have to go and download it. What I'm going to do for this example is I'll just go ahead and hop out of this, and I'll just create a new folder. Why not? Make dir 03 vinyl. And then cd into 03. And then I'm going to npm install vinyl, oops, -fs. And this will give us a chunk of Gulp. A big chunk of Gulp. That sounds weird to say, doesn't it? Anyway, so let's open up code. And we have vinylfs installed. I'm not worrying about a package.json for this example. So let's go ahead and open up and let's create an index.js. Okay, so we want to use vinylfs. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import it. So vfs, come on, you can do it. Require vinylfs. That is not what I wanted to type. Then I'm also going to import streams. So I'm going to say stream equals require stream. All right, so for the first part of this example, I want to go ahead and let's just go ahead and copy a file. Something really straightforward. So I'm going to create a folder called source and a folder called dist. And inside of source, I'll go ahead and create a file called app.js, and I'll just say console log whoa, right? So we have a simple dist folder and a source folder with a simple file in it. So if I wanted to go ahead and copy over this file, I could say vfs.source, and I can say source, and I'll just grab everything with a JS extension, and then I'll pipe it into vfs.dest into dist. And I'll go ahead and say node index and hit enter. Coming back here, notice how dist now has this app.js. Let's add another file to make things interesting. Let's add a utility.js. All right, so we now have a utility.js. Come back here, rerun it, and now we have a app.js and a utility.js. It's just copying the files. We opened up a vinylfs stream here with the source, which, by the way, is the exact same thing as Gulp source. Then we piped that vinylfs stream, an object stream, into vfs.dest, a writable stream. And that's what happened. So let's make a transform. Let's make what essentially is a Gulp plugin. So this is the third transform that we put together in this section. Again, my goal here is try to remove as much of the black box that Gulp tends to be to people who are just starting off as I can. So we'll just do a basic plugin, and I'll do a new transform, or sorry, new stream.transform. And so for my basic plugin, oh, what are you yelling at? Ah! I am... Blah. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way. Okay, so we have our basic plugin. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it object mode. Because, again, the VinylFS streams work in object mode. And then I'm going to do a transform. And I'm going to say function, file, encoding, next. Now, I'm not doing chunk encoding next. Obviously, the name of the parameter doesn't matter. But typically speaking, I'll just use file because it makes more sense. So I'm going to get a file object. Let's just take a look at what the file object looks like. I'm going to do console log file, and then I'm going to do next. So all I'm doing is logging out the file, and then hitting next. So I'll delete these two guys, because I want to show you guys the result of me applying this, this plugin, quote-unquote, really just a stream transform. And I'm going to pipe it after we do our .source. So I'm going to pipe basic plugin. All right, let's see what happens. Check that out. So we got two vinyl files. So I could also say file dot path, for example, if I wanted to get the path information out. Check that out. So now I'm actually getting the path information out. So the reason why this doesn't look like a straight up object is because the file object has its own two-string implementation. If you're curious, you could also go ahead and just say JSON.stringify the file to actually look at all the different parameters are inside of this file. So we have things like history, CWD for the current directory, mode, base, all this stuff we can take advantage of. And if you're really interested, you can, of course, open up the source code of VinylFS and actually take a look. But anyway, so let's go ahead and actually grab the contents of the file and perform a transformation. So basically, VinylFS works in two modes, a buffered mode or a streamed mode. So we can actually have a file being read in as a stream and then transform it as a stream, as a normal stream. So it's a stream within a stream, you can kind of think of it like. Or we have buffered mode where the entirety of the file gets loaded in. Now, the reason we have two modes is because the stream mode will be faster when we're actually streaming in the file contents from the file system. That'll be more performant, but not all transforms can be done streaming. Obviously, if you were to minify a CSS file, you're gonna have to have the contents of that entire file in memory. So in this case, we're getting a file with a buffer, so we can go ahead and actually grab the entirety of this file's contents, modify it, and then push it back onto the stream. Notice how, remember, I don't have this.push anymore on this transform. Look at dist. Dist is empty. Because we're not doing this.push on the transform, we're not sending that file back, which is really cool. Like, we can take a bunch of files, collect them up, and then dump a single file. That's how the concatenation plugins work. But let's go ahead and get the contents. So I'm going to say const contents equals file.contents toString. And then I'm going to say file.contents equals new buffer of contents. I don't know. Let's just replace everything with... oh, what are you complaining about? Oh, well, obviously that's not going to work quite right. How would I go about doing this? Never actually had to escape something like this before. Let's just replace every single word with B. Or how about blah? And space. So basically, we are loading up the contents, and we're replacing every single word character with blah. And we're setting that back to the file.contents, so it has a new buffer for its contents. And then I can say this.push file.contents. Or sorry, just file. Derp. Remember, we want to push a vinyl file onto the stream. So now if we run this and open up dist, check that out. We replaced every single word character with blah, although the punctuation is still there. Not particularly exciting, but hey, it's an example of how you might write a Gulp plugin, and particularly how a Gulp plugin might work. Anyway, so I don't want to talk about, if you're really interested in writing Gulp plugins, you can go and read the documentation. I just want to show you guys they're not that scary, they're very straightforward. Obviously, we're not handling streams yet. Nor will we in this particular example. We're only handling buffered files. But generally speaking, a stream, a plugin, if it can handle both streaming contents and buffered contents, you would want to handle both. In this case, we're only handling buffered contents. If I were to pass a stream into this transform, I would get a nasty error. Okay, so let's actually use this as an opportunity to talk about an incredibly important aspect in Gulp. Something that you're going to run into if you start working with Gulp and more advanced or even intermediary plugins or scenarios. In fact, this is going to be something that we're going to run into in this series. And it's a problem that needs to be resolved. The problem is what if we want to read in a normal Node file stream? Just a straight up Node file stream. So what if we wanted to do something like this? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new folder called docs. Inside of docs, I'm going to write doc1.txt. I'll say, hey there. Pretty straightforward. Now, what if we get a stream and it's for this doc1.txt, but we want to use it in vinylfs and in Gulp? How would we do that? Well, let's see what happens when we try to. So I'm going to import my file system module. And I'm going to go ahead and say fs create read stream and do docs, doc1.txt. So I'm creating just a normal Node read stream for this file. And I want it to go into vinylfs. So how would I do that? Well, you might think, okay, well, we could pipe it right to vfs.dist, and let's send it to dist. All right, so seem pretty reasonable, right? They're all streams. However, we have a problem. We get this error. Not particularly helpful error. But basically what the error is telling us is, hey, you're piping a stream that's not an object stream, and it does not have vinylfs files in it. You're just piping raw data into me. I don't know how to deal with that. I'm vinylfs. I only know how to deal with vinyl objects. And that's what's happening. That's why we're getting that error. So how do we fix it? So how do we take it from normal Node readable stream and turn it into a vinylfs file? Basically, it boils down to this. We need to attach additional metadata to this stream. We need to give it a file name. All vinylfs files, even if they're not real files on our file system, they're virtual, must have a name. So how do we give it a name? Well, not surprisingly, there's a Node package for that. And that is Vinyl Source Stream, your friend. Get to know this very well because this fixes a lot of potential problems. Basically, Vinyl Source Stream takes a normal text stream and turns it into a vinylfs object. So let's go ahead and use it. I'm going to pop over here and I'm going to npm install vinyl-source-stream. Get that installed. While that's installing, I'll go ahead and import it. So I'm going to, up here, I'm going to say source equals require vinyl-source-stream. And how do we use it? Well, if you guessed pipe, you'd be correct. So basically, this is a transform stream that'll take a text string and turn it into a vinyl object. So we have to pipe it before we pipe it into anything that expects a vinyl object, such as vfs-dist. So I say pipe, and then I'm going to pass in source, and it accepts it wants a file name. So I'll just call it blah blah blah.txt. At this point in the stream, this file is now wrapped into a single vinyl file object. So now if I do node index, come back here, blah blah blah.txt was indeed emitted to the distribution folder. Alrighty, so now we have another potential issue, the last potential issue you might run into. Remember how I was talking earlier about how vinylfs streams can either work on buffered contents or stream contents? What happens? What do you think happens right now? First of all, if I tried to pipe this into my transform right here, Obviously, it would fail because it's not a vinyl object yet. But right here, it will be a vinyl object. So I'm going to pipe it right into my basic plugin. What do you think is going to happen? Well, that happens. And, well, you can't really see this because of the way I did that transform. Let me kill that thing and just push the well, actually, let me just push, whoa. We're going to replace the entire file with the, well, we'll do contents plus whoa. So we're appending whoa to the contents. Let's run that again. This will be a better example. What? What's going on there? Object, whoa. We're not getting the contents of doc1.txt. We are getting something else. We're getting an object. That's because our plugin doesn't handle streaming contents. Again, if you're interested about how to have this plugin handle streaming contents, you're more than welcome to check out the Gulp plugin handbook. But let's fix this. How do we fix this without making our plugin work with streamed contents? The answer is there's another npm package that'll do that for us. So this plugin, Vinyl Buffer, is practically required if you need to take a streaming source and buffer it to work with the majority of your Gulp plugins, because the majority of your Gulp plugins are only going to work with buffered data. So how do we use it? Well, first step is we got to install it. So npm install vinyl buffer. Once we have that installed, I'm going to go up to the top here, and I'm going to add another require. I'm going to say buffer equals require, not surprisingly, vinyl buffer. And how do we use it? Well, we pipe it in. So vinyl buffer expects to be working on a vinyl object that is in a file content streaming mode. So I'll do it after we send it into vinyl source stream, but before I send it into a plugin that wants buffered data. So all I have to do is say pipe buffer. And now, if I run node index and come back to blah blah blah.txt, it says, hey there, whoa. So it actually does go in, grab the entire buffered contents of the file, and append whoa to the end of it. And that's it. So that is the internals of Gulp. That is how Gulp works. Don't be afraid of plugins. They're not that scary. And I showed you guys how to resolve two very, very common issues. The first being you want to stream something into Gulp, but it's not a vinyl FS stream. And the second one being you want to use a plugin that only works with buffered files, but you're in a streaming context. And that's it. I mean, I hope you guys liked the deep dive into Node streams and vinyl FS and stuff and things. I think it's time to get back to Gulp. But again, when we get back to Gulp, all Gulp really is a task runner built on top of the vinyl FS virtual file system, and that's it. So I guess we'll see you guys in the next video.